Hello and welcome to LibTech Tools. I'm Rachel Hendrick, the editor and publisher of Choice, and I'm here with Gary Price, the editor of InfoDocket and ARL Day in Review. Today we're looking at the American Archive of Public Broadcasting. In another video, I think you will remember, we looked at the C-SPAN video library. So this is another video collection. And Gary, why do you like this resource? Why is it important?
Well, as you said, with the C-SPAN video library and with this one, I don't really believe, I think that we could be making, I should put it that way, better use of non-textual materials from credible, authoritative sources. And like C-SPAN, this is another one. The American Archive of Public Broadcasting has been around now for several years. And as you can see up here in the upper left-hand corner, it's a collaboration between the Library of Congress and GBH, or WGBH in Boston, the Nova people, amongst many other programs. And it's just a treasure. And it's not only television, it's also radio. So there's NPR public radio stations from across the United States, and they contribute to this collection. And we'll see in a moment some of the material that's in here. But when you're doing any research project, this might be a resource that you would want to take a look at to see if there's relevant video that you could listen to or watch that would add extra material for whatever the research project is. And like C-SPAN, using this resource is completely free.
Well, I think, Gary, there's also, for me, an added nostalgia. I was looking at some of the McNeil-Lehrer news hours because my parents always watched that.
You know, for me, a show that was very influential in my life from PBS, aside from Sesame Street and the Electric Company, was a show from WGBH. And I say, for people my age who watch the show, we all know this, one of the zip codes of Boston, because it's 02134. And we know that because a show from the early to mid 70s and beyond on WGBH and on PBS was a show called Zoom. And it was a kid show, and you can find episodes of that in here as well.
It also occurs to me as we're talking that another use of this is to show how media has changed. Because, you know, PBS and NPR are not immune to that either. I often see, you know, someone says, oh, you know, NPR, you know, all things considered, they now do this. And I don't really remember what NPR has done in the past. So I think this is a good way to mark changes.
Yeah, and I think, and by the way, that's a great idea for another video. And as we can talk about some of the actual NPR archives online.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's look at this one. What have you got?
Obviously, there's a search box. There's an advanced search interface, very simple, very, for lack of a better expression, Google-like. But an interesting way to get familiar with some of the idea of what's in here is to browse some of their special collections and exhibits, or browse by organizations that contribute to this collection. But looking at special collections, you can see things, you know, the Kansas Public Media has donated material to this. PBS television shows. Here is all the PBS 9/11 coverage. It's all in here. So I'll just continue to scroll. There was a show on PBS called Rock and Roll. That's in here. Also, what you can also find in here is unaired material. So they did a show, The Murder of Emmett Till, and the actual raw interviews, completely extended, or much longer, I should say, than the interviews that actually aired. All of that footage is in here. It was a very influential business show of the 70s called Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. That's in here. So these are just some of the special collections. There are the incredible American Masters series, raw interviews from there as well. I'll click on that one. You can keyword search there, but just look at some of the actual interviews that they have in here. You know, that go on. It's not just the little clip that you see in American Masters, but it's the entire interview they did with these people. So here's a 22 minutes. Let me just continue. So this is incredibly valuable research material, obviously based on whatever you're researching. So a great way to get us to get familiar with some of the things you might find in here are through these special collections. Of course, you can also there's also, when we go back, there are special exhibits based on a specific topic. Here is the Zoom collection that I mentioned, the exhibit. But it's just unbelievable what's in here. There was a very famous, influential PBS show called Eyes on the Prize about the civil rights era. All those interviews are in here. So
my son is in middle school, and he just did a project on HIV/AIDS and the epidemic in the 80s and 90s. And I wish I'd known about this because he asked me about it, and I remember it. But this is just great primary material. I didn't want to send him to YouTube because you never know exactly what you're going to find on there. So
here's another great collection. Maybe in the future he'll be doing a report on the Watergate period. Here is all the complete coverage that PBS aired during that period. All the hearings, they're all in here. And you can just click on and start watching them.
It's an amazing collection, and I understand that it's all coming from PBS stations, correct?
Right. So, for example, the Watergate hearings, the actual video was contributed by WETA, which is the PBS station here in Washington. But let's do one search.
Okay.
And you mentioned it a moment ago. So the PBS NewsHour, aka the McNeil-Lehrer Hour, NewsHour, it's all in here. Back to, so let me just go to the actual collection here. Once you find, so you can keyword search. Well, here's what's most amazing about it. So let's just pick one episode. And you can see these were donated. Well, these were donated by NewsHour Productions, the underlying organization that produces it. But so let's go back to this one. So along with the video, one click and you're viewing it online. Also get a searchable, right there, text transcript. So,
that's so cool.
It makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for. But if you think about all the historical events and the interviews, and because it's PBS NewsHour, they were often longer than what you might find elsewhere. So they're longer, they're with very important people.
Yeah.
And it's produced by a very credible source.
Yeah.
And it's free. So if, like you said, I think the example you gave with your son is great. If he's researching a topic like HIV/AIDS in the 80s, this is primary source material. You can find interviews through this collection. I'm going to gather, for example, with Dr. Fauci, who was so involved.
Yeah.
You go right to him here, get to him, you get the transcript, and you're golden. And that's the value of this. You know, for those of us in the library community who not very long ago would have dreams of being able to get our hands on this stuff quickly, efficiently, let alone for free. The time is now. It's here. I will say, you know, it's not always easy to get to, but if you know about some of these collections and then the sub collection, the special collections that they offer, it's a lot easier. And it's a great example too, Rachel. You just said a really important thing. You said, if you would have known about it. So the key to it is knowing that a special database like this exists in the first place. Once you know that, you can say, hey, before you turn in your project, before you write your paper, let's do a quick check to see if there's anything on X topic.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of that, like the C-SPAN library, the video library, and so forth. So the first thing and the most important thing often is to know that these special collections, these databases exist. Then it takes just a second to see if there's anything in there. If there is, you can watch it. If there's not, you move on. So that's why I think this is a really great collection of really interesting, important video that not long ago was very, very difficult to get your hands on.
And I love the fact that it's public, it's free, it's our, our tax dollars at work. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much, Gary. I'm going to spend some time with it.
Thank you, Rachel.